Hi, it's Professor Murray, and this is the second half of the lecture on cost control. In the first half, I talked about estimating and creating a budget. So if you haven't watched that lecture, go back and watch that. Now I'm going to talk about cost control. When you're managing a project, there's some basic questions. How much have we spent? Second question, what is the value of the progress to date? We've spent a certain amount of money on the project so far. How much have we gotten done, and is what we've accomplished worth what we spent? Another important question is, how much more money do we need to spend? What is it going to cost us to finish this project? What will our final cost be? What's the overall price of the project? And of course, are we above budget or below budget? To do all this, we're going to use Gantt Project software, and we're going to use Excel. If we had access to Microsoft Project, we could do all of it in Microsoft Project. Let's have a look at the Gantt Project first, and then we'll move over to Excel. Here's my sample project in Gantt Project. I've got 20 or 30 different tasks, and I've got start dates and end dates, and on some of them I've marked some progress to show how far complete it is. I want to add in some cost information and some budget information. The first thing I have to do is I have to manage my columns. If I right click anywhere, it gives me the option here at the bottom to manage columns. Now, if I look down here, there's one, cost is grayed out, but it's there. So all I have to do is click on cost and click show selected. And you see cost column has appeared. There's not a default column for budget, so I need to add that. I'll just click at the very bottom and type in budget. And it appears grayed out, so I have to click on it and show selected. And now I have my budget column. Now I'm going to start putting in some budget information. And remember, budget and cost are very different. In my example in the previous lecture, I had a budget for the mill, so place order for the mill, and that guy was $14,500. I had a budget for renting a forklift. That guy was $200, and then I had training budget. So down here, I'll put in $600. Okay, those are the three I used in my previous example, and maybe I'll just put in a couple more. I'll do foundation, maybe that's $2,000, and wiring, let's say $3,000 for my main wiring. My control wiring, I'll put in $500, and my computer panel, let's put in $2,000. Okay, I've got some budget information in there. I don't have any cost information. I'm going to put in this $14,500. That was my budget for buying the mill. I'm going to enter cost. I'll put in, say, $13,000. Okay, I've got my cost of $13,000, my budget $14,500. Notice over here, this is somewhere around 3/4 complete, and that's going to be important once we get into Excel. All this budget information should be entered, and the cost information. That's all we can do in Gantt Project. It doesn't have the capability of doing calculations. It would be nice if it did, but it doesn't. But we have Excel. So the next step is I'm going to export this. So I'll go Project, Export, and the default is Microsoft Project file. We don't want to use that. We want a comma separated value. So select that guy, hit Next, and pay attention to where it's going to save it. This is in my downloads, and it's going to be called millschedule.cvs. So that's fine. I'll go over to my downloads, and there it is, mill schedule. All I have to do is double click it and it opens in Excel. A little bit of housekeeping here. First is I'm going to do a save as, and I don't want it in CVS or CSV format. I want to change that to Excel. I'll just leave it in downloads and save. Next, if I click on the triangle here, it selects all my sheet, and double click somewhere at the top, and that spaces everything out so I can see everything going on. The only other thing is there's some stuff here that I don't want, so these columns I don't really care about. So I'm just going to highlight all of them and delete them. I've got my tasks, the begin and end date, duration, completion, and that's in a %, but notice it's not formatted correctly. My cost and my budget. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change this completion to a %. So insert a column, call that % complete, and that I'll just do equals that divided by 100. Double click, and now I've got % complete. So here it's 62% instead of 62. Next, I need to put in some columns for the information that I need. The first one I'm going to do is earned value. Cost to complete, cost at completion, and I'll put delta. All right, let's look at these columns. Earned value. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my % complete. So my earned value equals % complete times my budget. So there I've got 0 value. If I drop that down, now this is interesting. On my place order for the mill, I have a cost of $13,000. My budget was $14,500. But because I only have it 62% complete, and that comes from, on this chart, I've shown it as that's 62%. So because I'm only 62% complete, my earned value is $8,990. So that's the value of how much that work is done. If I had it 100% complete, this would show as $14,500. And I don't have any other earned value. My cost to complete, what that is how much money I need to spend to finish the project. So I'll take my % complete equals, and I want to do 1 minus % complete. So that tells me how much of the work or how much the task needs to be completed. So 1 minus % complete times my budget. So times that. And if I drop that down, now you can see, for example, with my hire forklift, I have a budget of $200. I haven't done any of that. I haven't hired the forklift, so I need to spend $200 still to complete the project. This next column, my cost at completion, to calculate that, I need to take a look at my cost to date, so my cost column, plus my cost to complete, and that's my cost at completion. So if I do equals my cost plus how much I need to spend to complete it, that's my cost at completion. Let's see what that looks like. So, and we have to be careful here because costs are summarized by that software. So I actually want to put that guy to 0. Now if we look for my mill, I've got a cost so far of 13,000, and I don't have very high earned value, and it shows that I still have to spend 55.10 to complete that task. So this is showing that my total cost at completion on that mill is 18,510. What this tells me is that even though right now I'm under budget, I spent 13,000, I have a budget of 14,500, I'm actually not projecting to be under budget, I'm projecting to be over budget. And then if I do a delta, delta is just another word for difference. So the difference, that equals my budget minus my cost at completion. And now I can see that this mill purchase is projected to be $4,000 over budget. That's what we do for cost control. We start out with our budget and we plug in our costs as we go. And based on our budget, our costs, and our percent complete, we can calculate these important factors. What's our work worth so far? How much is it going to cost us to complete the project? How much will we have spent on the whole project when we're finished? And are we going to be over or under budget? For each one of these columns, I might want to summarize. So I'm just going to click Auto Sum, hit Enter, and I can drag that over. And now I can look at the status of the whole project. That's it for cost control. Thanks for listening. Have a nice day.